Good morning, Kelly. Finally, I am getting to your reread, and I have everything laid out. So, I'm not going to go back through every single card, but the first layer, we have that Eight of Wands, that movement, and then something kind of heavy and dark, risky, conflict, fighting, which is repeated here. The first two cards that came out. Let's see, do a little readjustment here. And Three of Swords in reverse, which is it. Lonely, heartbreak, frightened, and in reverse, it's a coming out of, not going into. And then we have the Tower. And the Star. So, what came in kind of after the fact, when we were talking about, who it might be. And I do see this as being basically a relationship with Jason, getting pregnant with Eileen. This is moving into it too quickly, the whole, getting pregnant thing and everything. So, of course, that created a bunch of conflict and strife. And I feel like a lot of this is also internal as well as external. And, this is, so there's that heartbreak, but I also feel like this is that having to deal with things alone and, meaning without him. And kind of just sort of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and dealing. There's still a lot of heaviness around, but there's also this moving through it. The Tower is, I feel like this is kind of the overall sort of energy of this period. Like it came and went and came and went. Like you'd have periods where, things would get really difficult. Things would transition and, and it was also the end of your time as being a teenager, really. You had to grow up really quickly. So this was a transition into basically almost instantly from being an adolescent to being a parent. So that's a huge destruction. Not necessarily like negative destruction. I mean, it can seem that way in the moment, but it's the end of the life before Eileen. And that's what towers are. They're endings. They're a fixed ending. Like you are not going to be able to go back and redo. It's a closing out, that aspect, that process, that period, that chapter is done. There is no going back to it. The Star card, wish fulfillment, destiny, fate, what you most desire, things like that. And honestly, I feel like this is kind of that like this movement here was all so difficult and so challenging and so transformational in your reality, in your life. But then when you had Eileen, when she was born, it was like there's those moments when you first hold your child, and it's like that you're just filled with so much love and so much joy that you just all of a sudden in that moment cannot imagine your life without them. And I kind of feel like that is what this is, you know, and reviewing and everything. The second layer of cards Ten of Swords, the Five of Wands, and the Three of Pentacles. This is after, you know, when the hardship and knowing that you were doing things alone. So the Three of Pentacles is about collaboration, partnership. That wasn't there. You know, the Ten of Swords in reverse, you were pretty much on your own, but there was not really an opportunity to sit in this energy. You're a mom, you know, so it's the Five of Wands in this case goes with, I feel like, this Ten of Swords, you know, along with, you know, this Three of Pentacles, kind of the realization that you're on your own. And then that's this energy of you had to, what I feel like, Kelly, is that there was all this conflicting emotion that maybe didn't get fully processed. You know, it created this internal conflict, but being a mom, you didn't have time. You didn't have really the opportunity to sit with the feelings of this breakup that had you on your own. You know, being a single mom at 17. And just, there was just a lot of conflict in that period of time, both internally and externally. And just not really a lot of time to cope or deal with it. With this breakup, again, we have the conflict, Wheel of Fortune in reverse, the sadness, or coming out of it, you know, just, here's how I feel like it went, is there is this conflict within, you know, the pain from his whole relationship and everything else. You have Eileen. This is kind of repeating that conflict, that fighting. And fighting to survive, fighting to live life, fighting to do all this stuff that you suddenly have to do because your life has utterly transformed. And, you know, this is obviously the end and a beginning of, oh, pardon me, my alarm just went off. Okay, sorry about that. And, you know, this Page of Cups, I'm taking my love back. With this insight, into interpretation. I feel like this is more like pushing those emotions down and away. Because of this ending, because of the conflicts, because of this transition, it just, there's this kind of understanding that you have to keep moving. You have to have this change in life. You have to have this change in how you are and what you do. And it was just, I can't pay attention to me. I have someone else to pay attention to now. And that, that's going to create that internal conflict. And it was also probably a change in the way of, not just your life, but how you operated as a person, how you operated within your own space within. So you had to start over, basically, and become someone other than what you were used to being, because you have this whole situation now that requires a different kind of attention and a different kind of presence. And it's got a pretty heavy energy to it regardless. This heartache, again, we're repeating. Hanged Man, that new perspective. Magician, manifesting this change. Engaging in it, acting in it. And then the Death card is, I gotta just move forward. I gotta leave all this stuff behind and just move forward. Which is then, of course, repeated here with the Tower. Two of Wands is kind of that planning. How am I going to move forward? What am I going to do? How am I going to cope? This Eight of Wands is this releasing, this letting go, or so it seems. And then the Knight of Swords. If I remember right, I think the Knight of Swords might have come out reverse. I think it did. And if that's right, that Knight of Swords would be not being honest with yourself. Because when you feel like you have to push things back, push things aside, especially emotions and processing loss and processing grief and all of that, you're not being true to yourself. It's a self-deception, and sometimes it's what we have to do to cope. So it's not like a criticism, it's just that's what we have to do in order to cope, is make ourselves believe that we're okay when maybe we're really not. But in order to keep going, that's what we have to do. Wish fulfillment. Page of Pentacles. I may not have a lot, but I'm giving everything I do have. This is one of the most beautiful cards. And it's just that love, that parental, maternal love, that just makes all this kind of worth it. And this just is. And it doesn't matter what the threat or the challenges or the difficulty or what is waiting below. If you look, those are swords. And this goose is protecting and guarding and carrying that child. And that's what a decent mom does. You know, it doesn't matter what's waiting around. We're gonna this is our priority right here. And we make sure that we stay above that line, one way or another. With a repeat, Four of Cups in reverse, pushing down that sadness, pushing it away, not paying any attention to it. Yeah, this is feeling much more. So Eileen is in here for sure. And the youthful energy is in here for sure. Exactly how it was coming through, well, you blame the reader, not the cards on that. We have the same message repeated with what came out on the bottom of the deck. I mean, I went through everything. The Chariot. That's a really fast movement. That's this right here. Really fast movement. Except the Chariot, like I said, is that controlled but not controlling. The Hierophant, the High Priestess, the Ace of Cups, and the World. With these cards, I think this is kind of everything that came after. You know, kind of what you grew into in spite of. You know, that utilizing that controlled movement, intuitively knowing, intuitively understanding that, you know, with this ending of life as you knew it, you know, so here's the ending is the World. That you had to be able to love with all your heart, with everything in you, you know, and just moving away from the past as best as you can and using every bit of guidance, both internally and externally. The High Priestess is that internal wisdom, that connecting with our intuitive self, which when you become a mom, that intuition goes through the roof, right? You just know things, particularly as a mom, in that role, you know about your child, you know what's going on, you just, when it matters, you know. You know, whether you want to call yourself psychic or not, when you're a mom, you have that connection with your child, and you just know stuff. So you were very in tune with this part of yourself. And there was also the recognition that there was guidance and assistance. So whenever you really knew, and this could also be, there were a lot of issues with your mom, and I know that. At the same time, she was there with you, and she did have that prior experience, and she did provide that care and support as best as she knew how. And I feel like you probably turned to her more than you realize. And there may be still some things to process around that as well. And this Ace of Cups, I think in this whole process, you did learn more about loving yourself. The majority of this went to, obviously, your daughter. Just that absolute love, that new beginning in love, that would be reflective of the Star card, that new beginning in love. You know, and yes, you did learn, and there was still this past projection of the pain it caused. And I think that's what these two cards are about. That's what I honestly feel now, is that inner conflict. You know, and trying to change your perspective of how you dealt with that inner conflict. Trying to see it as kind of a prettier cage, if you will. And it is, but it isn't, because it doesn't rectify the inner conflict. It does help one to move forward, but you're still trapped with that. You know, it's just changing how you perceive the conflict within. You know, and you've always had kind of this penchant to see things on the more positive, lighter, I don't want to use the word Pollyannish, but back in the day it was a little bit Pollyannish. You know, you're a great deal wiser now, have been for a long time. But, you know, when we were teenagers, there was a little bit of this innocence that's still there, and yet there was this very heavy inner challenge that I don't know that really too many people understood, because nobody else was really in that position, in that role, in that situation. And the desire to, you know, be out there like everyone else. But you have this new situation with Eileen, and there's just, I can't. And then that created conflict. So then we pulled some clarifiers about what this all was about, in truth. And we got the world, again, repeats that ending and perfect timing, which what that tells me with this change in interpretation, this clarification, is it was actually, despite all the challenges, all the difficulties, all the hardship, for you with where you were, even though it may not seem like it, it was the perfect time in your life at that point to have Eileen. You know, and it did change your world, but it was the right time for you. Why? I couldn't tell you. You know, but it may be that if you hadn't had her then, there would have been something else where she was meant to come in the world, you know? And she was meant to come in the world the way she is, the way she did. And so the timing has to do with the relationship. And I mean, we're all connected, we're all one, and yet we are all one of a kind. The chances, there is no way that Eileen would exist as she is without this relationship, that time, you, that person, that one sperm, that one egg. I mean, there's the odds of a repeat are non-existent. And so to me, this tells me that she was supposed to come into the world exactly the way she is, as she is, who she is. And this was the time to allow for that. I kind of feel like this is a message to you right now, with the owl and the bridge. Sees through the facade. Secret is lifted. Insights, wise, aware, observant. Communication, unite, connecting, integrate, overcome barriers, share, harmony, compromise. I kind of feel like this is some of what you have processed in this situation. I also feel like there's more. Otherwise, it wouldn't be showing up. Never mind interpretation. This is going to lead you to more happiness and more confidence and being more in your power and leading you into a happier, more fulfilling part of you. And I think what I feel like is this, all this right here, all these majors, you know, the Chariot and the Ace of Cups, High Priestess, the Hierophant, and the World. I feel like a lot of this has already come into your life, but with the positioning of where it sits, there's a lot more to come. And it's housed, you know, in this right here. It's basically the work, you know, the coming into the self more, which then gives you this power, this strength, this empowered, which of course then leads to greater happiness, joy, abundance, all that good stuff. Albatross, a good sign or omen. Baggage, burdens, feeling cursed, guilt, shame, regret. And then snowflake, precise, which is perfect, precise design, fragile, handled carefully, exquisite code, a pattern, detailed. These are like conflicting cards. In Eileen, there's that perfection. You know, because children are until they grow up and then they're not. And yeah, you have to handle her carefully. You know, being a child. Unique, exquisite, perfect, precise design. She was perfect. The issue comes with us. And I kind of feel like baggage, burdens, guilt, shame, regret, and a good sign or omen. I feel like that is a literal call that this energy is saying, okay, there was this, and underneath, there's still this. And this is the call to, you're in a good place to process this stuff, you know, the Hanged Man and Justice. I feel like this is what you have just moved into. Perspective, intuition, enlightenment, dreams, psychic ability, spirituality, inspiration, fantasy, and then justice. I feel like this is basically saying it's time to give yourself justice, to be fair to yourself. The kids are pretty much grown up. You have the time and the opportunity to get right with yourself in this stuff that probably did not get fully processed. And Mercury retrograde is a great time for that. In fact, I will go ahead and blame retrograde for the interpretive disconnect. And going through this process, it leads you more fully into this wisdom and this unity within, which then, of course, leads to greatest happiness And then you have another transformation, another timed transformation. You know, so it's like these cycles end just to lead into another cycle that repeats, but at the same time, it's got a whole different energy to it. So there was some of this, there has been this strength and this peace and joy and happiness within this, but release all of this, which is what I feel like this is saying and what I feel like these are saying. It's time to let go. It's time to move into full and complete freedom. And that is also, and again, we repeat, moving out of this energy because it's still there. It wouldn't have shown up if it wasn't. And the door is open to do that. You are now in a space to free yourself. You are now in a space to fly through that opening and no longer carry this behind it. So, you know, that's also when this comes into full fruition. Ace of Cups, and it's self-love. You know, I kind of feel like for so long there was a need to give that all. Look, if you look, the cup, the water is kind of flowing, and there's like this fairy here. The rest are fish. And it's like this mermaid fairy kind of creature, and it's washing straight over her. Now it's time to put it back. Make sure it all goes to you. And I kind of feel like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. The Chariot came out first. And it was the High Priestess, Hierophant, Ace of Cups in the World, I think is the order. Chariot is Cancer. Guess what I am? Cancer. This is just one interpretation that could be. I do feel like it's relevant. Hierophant. That could be the guidance from that you're getting right now. Again, it's a repeat, only at a very different level. High Priestess, listening to your intuition for truth, which is exactly what you did the first time. You listened to your intuition and said, yeah, it doesn't quite resonate. It's not quite right. It's never the cards, it's always the reader. So you know to feel and listen for what is true within. And that's what you're listening for here. Ace of Cups, like we just talked about. This is all to move you into that space for you, finally. And not that it's been bad, not that you haven't had this self-love. It just, you've been sharing an awful lot of what's in your cup. It's what you're supposed to do. But that also means that there's been not quite enough for you all the time. Now's the opportunity to complete that cycle and move more fully into that for you. So, Kelly, this one does feel a lot more when I was picking up the energy. The energy itself actually hasn't changed much. Even though it's a reread, just the who and how it applied is much clearer. It was a little bit of a struggle, and like I said, this is a layered life story reading from the past, you know, when your life just transformed utterly, all the way into future. The intention here is for this to change, you know, to gain that perspective within, to give yourself that justice, which means that peace within from all of this. You know, the good omen, the sign being it's time to let go of the baggage. Even though there is this perfection to it, there's still also the baggage. You can have both. Again, the world, time to end the chapter, and now is the time, and it is time for you to be happy and empowered within yourself completely. And to whatever it is that is guarding you from this space, to release that and get in touch with your higher self in order to be able to. I mean, the same message is repeated in these majors. This is the work aspect that you are being guided to, I feel like, in order to come to resolution with the pain of, and to not allow yourself to feel guilty or feel ashamed or feel in any way like it's not okay to feel these things. We feel how we feel. You know, this was a lot to take on. And oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. That is the block. There is a feeling of shame and guilt that you feel like you shouldn't have 20-something years later, that there was pain and anger and suffering and resentment and all those negative feelings tied into all of this, like in some way that invalidates the value that Eileen brought to you, which is not true. Feeling these things, feeling that pain, feeling the heartbreak, feeling that transition, feeling the pain of loss of the life that you had before, does not invalidate her existence. What it does is it revalidates yours. It is an honoring of all the feelings, all the emotions, all the experiences that you had at that time, and some of them are still hanging around in the background that need some attention, that need some love, that need some care, that needs some release, that needs probably some purging. And giving yourself the love and the compassion, the understanding that it is okay, that there's these conflicted feelings, and it's okay to allow yourself to feel the pain, to feel the losses, to release them. And I feel like this is very deep for you. Like, there may not even be the recognition. There may be an outright denial. It's hard to say. I am feeling a very strong block, but what I can't tell is how much you are actually consciously aware of. I get the energy, not necessarily the present thoughts. And I do feel like there's a very solid block there, but whether or not there's a through and you see and recognize that this stuff's still there, or if you're like, no, I dealt with that. Well, yeah, of course you dealt with some of it, otherwise those sun cards wouldn't have been in there. Star card wouldn't be in there. There wouldn't be these points where things are joyful and happy and loving and beautiful. There's also still a lot of pain and a lot of loss. There's still mourning to do. There's still the release of guilt and shame. Yeah, on several layers. So healing this part of your past and allowing yourself, loving you, loving you enough to release the burden of guilt and shame about how you felt under the surface of this love, so that you can process the feelings that are there. I'm seeing several layers. I feel like this is going to take time because there's just all these layers and this, the guilt about these feelings, the meaning that is being given to, well, I felt this way and shouldn't have. I feel like that's going to be a repeated thing that you run into as you go. So you're going to have to unblock it every time you get to each layer in order to heal this. Yeah. And it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And I'm feeling anywhere between like 3 and 5 layers. It's hard to define and explain because I see it. When we are healing, which it's a psychological and emotional process. We hit this first layer of, first there's dealing with that first layer of guilt and shame and, burden of, okay, why do I feel guilty for these feelings? And you run into the feelings, the thoughts, the perceptions on one level. So it's dealing first with that first layer of guilt and shame, addressing that. And then after that, there's the guilt and shame about the guilt and shame. It's pretty dense. And you run into these initial sets of feelings, maybe about how you were as a parent at that age. And releasing the guilt and shame and burden of whatever you're telling, whatever your story is. And the front story is going to be, because it's you, the front story is going to be something positive. You will have created a positive story, which is great, except that there's that, what was it, that Knight of Swords. Yeah, right there. That Knight of Swords. Not being honest with yourself. And that's way back there, because it's what you had to do. And there's going to be a bunch of these in there where it's about, how you dealt with things in different areas of your experience and undoing those beliefs of, and you are just the kind of person that you want to put a positive spin on things. The only downside to that is it covers up the layered pain underneath. It allows you to move forward. It allows you to keep going. It allows you to have these positive, beautiful experiences, but underneath, this stuff's still there. So it's like it's a masking, really. And it's not the kind of masking that's meant to be harmful. And the unfortunate consequences that it is, because then we have to uncover the mask and deal with the crap underneath. Then the mask is no longer a mask. It becomes the genuine, real value and appreciation, and it's just how people operate in order to move through a difficult situation where the opportunity to process correctly just doesn't exist. And that's okay. That's part of what healing is going back in and allowing ourselves to unmask the things that did not have the space to move through in the moment. And the burden that is going to be released for you in this process is going to be massive. That's what that albatross is. It's those burdens that are, and the owl is that seeing through, your own illusions. And again, this is not to diminish the need or the benefit of those illusions, but you no longer need them. They are no longer serving you. They are not necessary. So now it is time to remove them so that you have the space to get to this ultimate happiness. The sun is, except in one of my decks, the card itself, ego identity, the I am, which is that hidden energy underneath, along with the other. We can have more than one I am, obviously. Purposeful, directed, creative, our basic identity. That's talking about the authentic self, the stuff that's underneath all this that we're trying to get to. Self-realization, proud, censoring our inner child. That doesn't sound so great. Reason over instinct. The instinct is to allow ourselves to heal and process as it occurs. Sometimes we can't. Willfulness, success, and vitality. So, yeah, I do feel like it's going to be a little bit heavy for you going into this space, but you're one of those unique people that I'm not sure how you do it, but you've always gone with grace. Whether you realize it or not, you have that innate, natural energy of grace. So there is no doubt whatsoever that no matter how difficult and how challenging unveiling these truths within, confronting those burdens that have been layered over, and releasing yourself, I think you'll be amazing. And I think when overcome barriers, secrets lifted, sees through the facade. the facade of these blocks that were created in order to allow you to keep moving and doing so in the happiest, most fulfilling way that you could at the time. And it's of course, there's been so much other stuff. And a lot of that I think is going to come up too. I think this is going to be a breakthrough process for you, is the feeling I get. And it might take quite some time. So don't forget to be gentle with yourself. And I already know you've done a substantial amount. And there's more. And it's deep. Yeah, it's pretty deep. It goes pretty deep in. And it's gonna hit, I think, on everything that remains. And I'll be honest, Kelly, I feel like this is going to take you into a dark night of the soul, which is not a pleasant experience at all. We can have a conversation about that if you want. But you have done the groundwork. You have done the foundational work in order to handle that, is what I feel. And that's some of what all this has given you, is that inner strength to do this now. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's not. But I think this process and this time is really going to free up a whole lot within you. A whole lot. And I feel like it's going to be that world card that came up. The world showed up here with Eileen's birth. You've had several towers, but this is a closing out of this chapter of your life. And it is going to launch you into a whole beautiful new beginning. What exactly? Well, gotta get through this first. You know, our lives are done in these chunks. You know, we're human. You know, I don't care how psychic and how in tune and how much of a messenger vessel, whatever. I don't care how divinely guided you are, we're still human. And we all still have to go through these processes of healing and discovery and releasing and learning and experiencing, all of us. So I feel like saying congratulations, you made it. If you choose to move into this healing space, and I suspect you will, this is that point in your own life experience, in your own journey, that you have been looking for, that you have been waiting for, that you have been longing for, reading A Course in Miracles, going to counseling, all that stuff, all the things that you still have within that we've touched on bits and pieces over the years. This is it. This is the opportunity to begin that major step that you've known was going to come at some point. And it's here. Again, it's not a small process. And it's not something that's going to happen in days or weeks, probably not even months. It might take a couple years to get all the way through. But again, even that process is chunked, you know. So there's points in between where things are wonderful and your perspectives, you can look and see how much you've grown and changed. And then all this shit comes tumbling down again. And you're like, oh, fuck, here we go again. It's just because we need breaks. And the divine makes sure that part of us is honored. And the amount that we can take is insane. Because it doesn't feel like you're ever going to make it through all that. But you do. And it's kind of impressive when you can get to the other side and look back and go, holy crap, I have completely changed. And that's what you have been looking and waiting for. And it's here. So you had a hell of a journey just like the rest of us, and you are at a major culmination point of this chapter. So I look forward to hearing about it. And yeah, definitely gonna say congratulations, because this is a huge doorway. Whether you walk through it or not, that's up to you. Choices, all about the choices. You do have free will. You don't have to walk through it, but I think you've been waiting for it for so long. I don't think you're gonna have much hesitation about taking those first steps, but do be warned, the shit rolls downhill real fast. You know, and it's hard. It's really hard, but it's so worth it. So I hope that helps. I hope that clarifies. I hope that resonates more than the first time. It is very similar, yet the implications are immensely different. And so I hope that helps. I will talk to you soon. Love you.